One of the most stressful moments a traveler can face is landing at an airport, looking at the clock, and having absolutely no idea what you're supposed to do next. Do you go to baggage claim? Do you have to go through security again? Do you have to check in again? And what happens if your first flight runs late and you miss your connection? If you've ever wondered how connecting flights work, what happens to your luggage, or what you're supposed to do if something goes wrong, this video is for you. Today, I'm going to walk you through everything you need to know about connecting flights. So if you're a new traveler about to take your very first flight with a connection, you'll know exactly what to expect. Let's go.
Dream vacations start here.
So let's start with the basics. A connecting flight is simply when your flight requires more than one flight to reach your final destination. You fly from point A to point B, then board another flight from point B to point C. That stop in the middle is your connection, sometimes called a layover. Now, before I get into the specifics, there's one thing I need you to understand, and this is more important than almost anything else I'll say today. Are your flights booked on one ticket or two separate tickets? If you booked everything together and all of your flights share the same confirmation number, that's usually one ticket. If you book them separately and receive different confirmation numbers, those are separate tickets. The difference matters enormously. In fact, one type of booking could end up costing you hundreds of dollars if your first flight is delayed. I'll explain exactly why in a few minutes. And while we're on the topic, be careful when booking through third-party travel websites. Some sites sell what's called a self-transfer itinerary. It may look like one trip, but you're actually responsible for making the connection yourself. That can mean collecting your bags, checking in again, and going back through security. If your first flight is delayed, the second airline may have no obligation to help you. Always read the booking details carefully. Now let's talk about domestic connecting flights. For a domestic connection, meaning both flights are within the United States, the process is usually pretty straightforward. If you checked a bag, it was likely tagged all the way to your final destination when you checked in. In most cases, you do not need to collect it during your connection. The airline transfers it automatically. When you land, get off the plane, open your airline's app, or check the airport departure monitors, confirm your connecting gate, and head there. You do not normally go through security again. You do not check in again. You simply move from one gate to the next. If you need to change terminals, the airport may have a train, shuttle, or a walkway connecting them. Just make sure you factor that extra travel time into your connection. Now, here's something many travelers don't realize. Every airline and airport has what's called a minimum connection time. That's the shortest connection the airline considers possible for that airport. So if an airline sells you a ticket with a 45-minute connection on a single itinerary, they believe it's possible to make that connection. That doesn't necessarily mean it's comfortable. Personally, I recommend giving yourself more time whenever possible. For a domestic connection, I recommend a minimum of 90 minutes. At large airports like Chicago O'Hare, Atlanta, or Dallas-Fort Worth, I prefer closer to 2 hours. Airlines sometimes sell very tight connections, but planes get delayed, gates change, and terminals can be farther apart than you expect. Now let's move on to international connections because this is where things get a little more complicated. For international to international connections, many airports allow you to remain airside, meaning you stay inside the secure area of the airport and simply move from one gate to another. Your checked bags are often transferred automatically to your next flight. However, not every airport handles connections the same way. Some countries may require additional security screening, passport checks, or other procedures, even if you're not leaving the airport. If your connection involves arriving in a country and then taking a domestic flight within that country, you'll generally go through immigration and border control at the first airport where you enter that country. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're flying from Chicago to Nice, France with a connection in Paris. Paris is your first stop in France, so when you land there, you'll go through passport control before continuing on to Nice. After that, you'll head to your departure gate for your next flight. Depending on the airport, the season, and the number of arriving flights, that process can easily take 60 to 90 minutes or longer. That's why I generally recommend allowing at least 2 hours for most international connections and at least 3 hours if you're arriving into the United States and need to clear immigration, collect your bags, recheck them, and go back through security. Speaking of international travel, let's talk about transit visas. Depending on your nationality and the country you're connecting through, you may be required to have a visa even if you never leave the airport. This is called a transit visa. And yes, travelers are occasionally denied boarding because they don't have the proper transit documentation. The important thing to understand is that the transit visa requirements can change. This is not something you want to verify from a random travel blog the night before your flight. The best places to check are the IATA Travel Center, your airline, and the official government immigration website for the country you're connecting through. Your airline reservation may also provide information about required travel documents, but I always recommend verifying independently before booking. Now let's go back to that one ticket versus two ticket discussion, because this is where it really becomes important. If both flights are on a single ticket and your first flight is delayed, the airline is generally responsible for getting you to your final destination. If you miss your connection because of a mechanical issue, crew issue, or another delay, the airline will usually rebook you on the next available flight at no additional cost. Depending on the airline, the country involved, and the reason for the delay, you may also qualify for meal vouchers, hotel accommodations, or compensation. If the delay was caused by weather or air traffic control issues, the airline will still typically rebook you, but additional compensation is often much more limited. Now compare that to separate tickets. If your first flight is late and causes you to miss your second flight, the second airline may simply consider you a no-show. That often means buying a brand new ticket at your own expense. This is one of the biggest reasons I encourage travelers to book connections on a single itinerary whenever possible. Now let's talk about checked bags. If you're traveling on one ticket and miss your connection, your checked luggage is usually rerouted along with your new itinerary. However, there are situations where you make the connection, but your bag doesn't. When that happens, your luggage is normally placed on the next available flight and delivered to you once it arrives. Many airlines will deliver delayed baggage directly to your hotel or home address, although policies vary. If you're traveling on separate tickets, baggage procedures can become much more complicated, and you may be responsible for collecting and rechecking your luggage yourself. When in doubt, ask the airline's baggage service desk. And here's a tip that could save you a lot of stress. The moment you think you might miss a connection, don't wait until you land. Open your airline's app, look at alternative flights. If you have elite status with the airline, call the priority phone number. The earlier you start looking at options, the more choices you'll usually have. One more practical tip, sometimes your connecting gate won't be assigned right away. You may see TBD or gate assigned later. That's completely normal. Just keep checking the airline's app and the airport monitors as your connection approaches. And if you're traveling internationally without cell service, connect to the airport's free Wi-Fi as soon as you land so you can access those updates. Before we wrap up, let me clear up a few common myths. Myth number one, you always have to go through security again during a connection. Not true. Many domestic connections don't require additional security screening. Myth number two, you always have to collect your checked bags during a connection. Also not true. On many single ticket itineraries, your bags transfer automatically. Myth number three, a short connection automatically means you'll miss your flight. Not necessarily. Some short connections work perfectly fine. The key is understanding the airport, the itinerary, and allowing enough time whenever possible. Now, let me leave you with a few final tips. Always book your connecting flights on one ticket whenever you can. Download your airline's app and enable notifications before you travel. When you land, immediately verify your gate assignment. Consider sitting closer to the front of the aircraft if you have a tight connection. Research transit visa requirements before booking your flights, and for more complicated itineraries, consider purchasing travel insurance that includes missed connection coverage. Most importantly, remember that airports handle connecting passengers every single day. Even though it may feel overwhelming the first time, you're following a process that millions of travelers successfully complete every week. Once you've done it once, it becomes much easier. If you've ever had a connecting flight experience that didn't go quite as planned, let me know about it down in the comments below. And if you want to learn whether you'll need to recheck your luggage during a connection, check out this video next. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again in a future video. Safe travels.